So Anthony, there was one thought, man, that this hit me like years ago because I was in like very similar spot, like thinking for a very long time, like, man, I don't have a story, like totally related when you talked about like hearing people's testimonies and like comparing your own life. Like for so long, I was just like, yeah, I just don't really have a story. And I remember telling someone on a road trip my entire life story, and it took about 5 minutes one time. And it was just like it was pretty, pretty basic, whatever. And I was laying in bed one night, and I had just like this odd thought come to mind where I was like, man, I could die right now, and I would be fine with that. And it wasn't like a suicidal type thing. It wasn't like and it also wasn't like I've accomplished everything that I've set out to, but it was more like it was like in this split second. It was the weirdest thing, man. For one, it was like this heavy. I realized that I had been carrying around this heavy weight in my walk for years. That like I had taken on, not put there by God. But also just like in this split moment, just like God connecting all of these different pieces in my past. And not necessarily just things that I had been through, but also things that like I had been protected from. And it was out of that I just like realized a lot of the people that were in my life, that like most of them didn't really have a sense of family in a lot of ways. Maybe they had families, but they just had like really broken families or just like not tight families. And I know that none of our families are perfect, but I think just like growing up in an environment where like I had a good sense of like acceptance and family and love, like having seen that, like I, from that point forward, just wanted to extend that to others and like invite them into like, into community, just in a different context than I had before. It just kind of like some things clicked. So, yeah, I don't know. I just had that thought with you, man. Just that like some people, like they know what they lack, maybe they lack family. So like they see a need for that. But for like, for us who have had like legit family, just that I don't know. Sometimes I think God uses those circumstances where it's like, all right, maybe you don't have like a lot of the baggage that would come from like having really broken environments, in a way that like you can just like come around people, invite them in. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah, I don't know. Just want to encourage you with that. Like it's, you have a story, and I think God will continue to like reveal different things in your life that He's been at work through.
Yeah, I think like over the last couple of years, even I think I realized how many more people have a similar story. Because like for a long time I was like, wow, the church only, maybe it was coincidence, but I'm like, they only pick testimonies that like have a giant pivot point. Like it moves people emotionally, so they're like, oh, let's stir people's emotions. Like it'll be easier for them to see God that way, which I think is total bull, but it makes sense logically. But I think, I don't know, even up until like I think the last few years, I still at that time would think my testimony was kind of boring because I don't think I really knew who Jesus was. I think over the last, maybe it's just being an adult, like maybe like 19, 20 until now, really it's just been this like deconstruction of what I thought it was to be in the church, what I thought it was to follow Jesus, or even being able to know who Jesus was, actually have like a relationship. I think that for a long time until recently, like probably were the hardest years like of my life. Not that like anything circumstantial really bad happened to me, but I think like mentally and spiritually, there's a lot of dry seasons. Like as far as like the Bible always has agriculture analogies, like really just preparing and digging and just like the stuff that nobody wants to do. It's just way easier to be like, I just hope it grows, and I'm not gonna. I just don't really feel like getting into it. Um, but it took a long time, like, to realize maybe my faith wasn't my own, or like faith what I thought was. Just kind of what my parents instilled in me. Basically, just like morals. I was like, oh, morality equals Jesus. That's kind of like what my thought was on it. Um, I don't know. I think over the years it's been a lot of challenging the ideas that I was like, oh, this is what I see in the church. Maybe it doesn't have to be this way. Or like,
Yeah.
I read the Bible and like, it shouldn't be this way. Like going through periods of like bitterness and like just kind of disdain for the church or just like certain people in the church. Then I'm like, I just don't see like in the Bible. I just don't see this doesn't match up to me. Um, and that's not even like ministry or like systematic stuff. That's just like I if this is what Christianity really is, or like this is what if you're like the picture of following Jesus, then like we're screwed.
Yeah.
This just isn't like this is not good. So I think for a long time, like I really had to ask hard questions of, do I really like even believe that Jesus was real? Do I really believe that he actually like rose from the dead? And like in the church, those are just like no-nos. Like those are not questions that you ask.
Those are just things that we believe, and
yeah, it's just like things that are just instilled into you, and like it's you just go with it. Like you either I think it was like so extreme. It was either like you abandon it altogether, and you're just like, I'm done with the church and I don't want anything to do with it, or you just kind of stuck in it and you just went with the status quo, and those were the only two options. Until I was like, wait a second, like I don't have to do that. I don't have I don't have to just be fake and hate all of this, but I also don't have to like completely just dismiss it.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I wish like more people would take that road. I think it's just really easy to give up on it, just because I don't get too attached to people, at least anymore. Maybe it's because of all the people that I felt like abandoned me and like in the church or youth group. But it's like I just don't really put people on pedestals anymore. So I feel like even though like I had to go through all that, it's like easier to follow Jesus in that respect. Not that following Jesus is easy whatsoever. But as far as like, I don't have to worry about a person letting me down, like you would say,
Right.
and just kind of like peacing out and be like, oh, well, it doesn't really have anything to do with me like following Jesus or like spending time with him. So I think in that regard, maybe like that part of my past helped. And I think that like where it comes down to it today, with my testimony is a lot of looking back and being like, oh, God like did that, and I learned a lot from that stuff. And now it's my job to make sure nobody has to like go through it, but they can realize that it doesn't have to be that way, or they can preemptively stop it from happening.
Right.
Just being a part of the solution, I think, to a lot of the problems that I encountered, is like the practical side of like the testimony now, like where I'm at. But it took a long time to get there. It took a lot of like really low moments with like, hey God, if you are like actually real, I need to know, because like I got nothing. Like I'm pretty much gonna write you off. But like it was always God pulling me back in. A lot of times it was me like just like pulling teeth. But luckily, yeah. I don't know. Not to get like too deep into it and like as far as theology, but like that side of God, I think I've come to know a lot more, where like maybe before I was like, oh, like yeah, like I come to God myself. Like yeah, he goes halfway and like, or like maybe I gave myself way too much credit, I think, back then, but like starting to realize man, I suck. But Jesus
The
has
best
grace
place to
grace
be
on me and mercy abounding.
every day, dude. You like know something really, really good is like disembodying doesn't have to be the solution just because it seems easy. Um, there is a secret option three where like you don't have to like become an atheist and denounce everything that you've ever known, everything that you've ever read, and everything you've ever experienced God do. And on the other hand, you don't have to be like this CCM polo wearing khaki
Hey
Christian.
man, I liked
You know,
CCM dog. All right.
yeah, I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying like it doesn't. You don't have to just be that and fit that mold too. Like secret option three is actually like praying and reading the word of God and allowing Jesus to navigate what is and what isn't. And I think that's harder for a lot of people because it requires intimacy to do. Like it requires trust. Because like on this end, you have a lot of angry people that says that we're hurt, and on this other side, you have a bunch of angry people that are like we're right. And
Yeah.
then like it's like the Levi the poet thing, where it says like I feel like I'm in the middle of the teeter totter. Like for me, like that's literally where I feel like I am, like right in the middle of all of it. Like Jesus, what is of you? Let me have that. What is not of you? Give me the strength to either speak into it or to change it by your spirit.
Mhm.
But like what you've made and what you created in creating the church is a beautiful thing. So like maybe it just means we need you to actually for it to work the way it's meant to be. Maybe it means that we need more people who are actually devoted to following Jesus one on one so that the body as a whole can prosper rather than everyone hating Jesus and saying the church is all farce or it's all fake or it's all for nothing, which isn't true, or people painting pictures of Christ of what church history is and what it should be, which also aren't true. Like we just let Jesus define it, and if it's messy, it's messy.
Mhm.
But we allow him to have the glory through it, and we invite people in who want it. You know.
Yeah. I always come back recently to A.W. Tozer quote. Because he just says like the world doesn't need more Christians, it like needs better Christians. Um and like obviously the context of not better as in like legalistic and
Yeah, yeah.
like following more rules, but just like people that like
Devoted.
really like devote themselves to knowing God and really like following him. Um and it kind of points back to like to the results thing is like we don't need more people to sit in seats and just do nothing. And it's hard because it sounds harsh because you're like, well, the more people in seats that you have, the more percentage you get of people that could I mean you know, like the more percentage of
Mm,
people that can get saved and which more people like without the reality of it. Yeah, sure that makes sense like numerically, more people,
sure.
cool. I don't know, it just I think you look at like the bigness of church and like it just hasn't worked.
No.
Or
It
maybe
just
it, maybe
creates
it,
a
maybe
lot
it
of
has
shallowness.
worked, but
Yeah.
is that like coming back to what you said earlier? Like, is what works in our minds most important? And
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's I don't know, it's just I think a lot of people have been like driven to the church out of almost every other reason other than Jesus. Like the church will use anything. They'll like how do we be more modern? How do we dress up the gospel in the right way? How do we have an Easter service where we just do all these like peripheral things around the gospel to make it like more palatable?
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
I don't know, just like the where I've kind of landed with it all is like who cares about being palatable? Like how about we just give people Jesus and if they want him, great. Like they actually want him. If not, then hopefully like God will open their ears and their eyes at another time, or like
Mhm.
maybe a seed will be planted. It's
Right.
just like I feel like the instant gratification of the world is just seeped into the church, where it's like if they don't get saved like right now, like during this sermon, like they're going to hell, or like I'm a failure as like a disciple of Jesus.
Yeah.
Which is it's just a trap. It's a horrible trap the enemy uses, and I constantly find myself in the same place. It's not like I've just, even though I've had all these ideas that I feel like have been good over the years. Doesn't mean that I'm like living them or have like perfected them. Like I'm constantly battling with the same things. Um, but I don't know. It's this idea that I heard the other day. I think it was Francis Chan. Of course, everything I see right now is Francis Chan. But we're just like, how great would it be if I could just get like a few people in a room that like want to seek God? Because he talks about like the church in America. He's like, if you just like call a prayer meeting and like ask people to come, like yeah, you might get a few people, but like most people would be like, that's not really my thing. And he's like, okay, well, how about we shorten the prayer part? We get a band, we get a really good speaker. And he's like, oh yeah, then people will come for sure. And he's like, at what point is it like offending to God? It's like, you'll come for all this stuff, but you won't come for just me.
Yeah.
And he's like, at what point are we defaming his name? I think that like the first time I heard that like hit pretty hard. It was like, oh my gosh, like
as it
my
should.
my entire life, it's always, at least with like being like high school and under, it's like, how do we make it fun so people will go? And like with adults, it's like, okay, how can we make it, I don't know, like entertaining? Like, how do we make it entertaining, or like, how do we make it not what people have experienced like earlier in life? How do we make it not Catholic, like, or like all these different things? And at some point, like, it's not even about God anymore. I don't know. I think like, I guess the whole point of that is like, how as a body, how do we get to the point where like all we want is God, and we'll like do anything just to have him, and I can do away with all the other stuff.
Yeah. Good word.
It's a really good question. It's a really, really good question.
Yeah, it's not an easy answer. Like, no. I think all the ideas and all the presentation stuff is so simple, but it is extremely difficult to follow through.
Yeah. Calvin, hold me to it. Listeners, hold me to it. Anthony, hold me to it. But I want to have some guests on from out at We Are Church, which is, like the church that Chan started. Went out there for 10 days for like the church planning training thing. One thing that they said when we first got there was like, when you attend our gatherings, you will be very underwhelmed, which was very interesting and accurate, because they just said like, yeah, we strip things down, like we one of our like priorities is simple gatherings that don't point to us. There are a lot of like individual stories that I don't know like how much was like kind of behind the scenes info or whatever, but there are a ton of stories that just like the people that were the part of the church shared about Francis Chan, and about like him purposefully not being in a position where anyone could like put him on a pedestal, and like even times that people were like lifting him up and being like, man, he's like, operating in such humility. Like there are times that he was just like, no, that's like not what I'm trying to get at, and like has made moves to purposefully get himself out of the way, because he doesn't want this to be the church that Francis Chan started, like he doesn't want the attention to be on him. And like just seeing the effect that has had on the whole entire ministry, just like when the person that started it has that heart, like other pastors that are serving, like they have like that example, of just like, like, we're not going to be about, us in this, and yeah, when you really have it from the top down, like as far as people living, with that humility and like being the first one to point to Jesus and the first one to even confess and repent, and ask for prayer and like recognize their need for community and for reliance on God. It's like that affects everybody, like it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. And like the whole idea of just like empowering people in the body to actually use their gifts, like in that setting, especially in the same thing, like with like where like the church that I'm with is, okay, how do we, and definitely not perfected it,
Yeah.
but like how do we get people, like how to get off of like the bench and like get in the game, like actually do something. Not saying that like everybody's lazy, that's not the point. Is I guess the point is like we can't just rely on like 4 people to use their talents for 1,000-person church and expect people to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
It's yeah, and it's just constant struggle for me to not just like bash on like big church model, because I think like that does have a place, and I think if like we can somehow learn to get people to like use their talents, because it's not everybody can just use like their part of the body on a Sunday morning. There's just not enough time.
Yeah.
It's just like this idea of like breaking down this idea of I go to church like 2.5 hours and like that makes me a Christian. Or like and especially stopping the church from like having a person that goes to church 2.5 hours and like serves another hour or 2 in the week, and somehow like you applaud these people and being like, okay, these are the people you should emulate. Like, how is that? Like, where in the Bible does it say that you can spend 5 hours a week being a Christian and like you're the cream of the crop? Like,
or even like like a lot of the time we reduce serving and like love to serving like the gathering, you know. Like I mean that's something that I've been challenged with a lot recently, where I've realized like, yeah, when I think of serving the body, I don't think of like, all right, how can I meet your needs, and I don't know, just like doing life together and like really locking arms and like walking through things together. Like I think of, all right, what opportunities are there to serve the actual gathering and like the production of the gathering on a Sunday? And it's just like, whoa, that's like so ingrained that sometimes, I mean, I didn't even like challenge that way of thinking.
Yeah, because it's just like, it's almost this idea of, okay, you don't have a 3 or 4 song worship set. Like, can you even have church without that? Like, is this even church anymore? And you're just like,
oh my gosh,
I never even thought about that.
The struggle hurts.
You look at that, you look at Acts, like they're not playing music. And it's just, there's so much deconstruction that needs to happen, I think, for the church to get to a healthy place where, yeah, if the people in big church model were like serving and like really, I mean, call it for what it is, and I'm a part of the problem. Like, if you're actually praying and reading your Bible during the week, like, and expected God to move, who knows what would happen. But it's just this facade. Like, I can be a Christian and just go to church, and that like that makes me a follower of Jesus. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. I would say most of the people that say they're Christians for them probably aren't. And like I think that's a tough pill to swallow, and people will probably get really pissed if you like somebody like if Craig Rochelle said it to the whole Church of America, because a lot more people listen to him than me. But like that, if you say that stuff, like people aren't going to be mad. But I would say it's probably the reality. Is following Jesus is a lot more than the church has made it up to be. It's not God's fault. It's our fault. We've made it this way.
And the reality is comments like that are not condemning, you know, like comments like that are, I mean, I see it as like, hey, this is the reality, you know, like, and what it is, you know, if Christian means like little Christ, you know, if it means a Christ follower, and you're just, I mean, to reference this guy, Kyle Idleman, I don't know if you're familiar with the Not a Fan series, but just like that guy, a lot of us are like fans of Jesus. And a lot of like the people when Jesus walked the earth, like that followed, I'm saying physically followed after him, you know, that like hung out like, oh, this guy's doing cool stuff. Like he's feeding crowds, he's healing people. Like, let's check this stuff out, you know, that like whenever Jesus like taught something that was very difficult to swallow, a lot of people would just be like, I don't know if I can get behind this, you know. So it was just kind of like they were huge fans of the guy, you know, like they loved what he was
Hmm.
doing, but when it actually cost them something to follow, um, they pieced out, you know, and and yeah, I mean, I think when Jesus like pointed out like you know the rich young dude, he was just like, all right, yeah, you've kept all the laws, you know. One thing that you're lacking is all right, like I'm calling you to sell everything you have, give to the poor. The guy just like goes away sad, and it's like that's not a condemning thing. Like that's very much just like a hey, like this is where you're at, and here is how to follow me, you know. And
Hmm.
Yeah.
it's like he chose not to, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
And
think
like,
it's any secret. Go ahead, Cal.
no, go ahead, bro.
All right. I don't think it's any secret, and it feels conflicting because he's like, "Hey, go to the ends of the earth and like be my disciples," but he also says like the road to like salvation is very narrow, or like
Hmm.
like you're more likely to fit through the eye of a needle, and I'm like,
Yeah.
huh. But then you look at like you look how Jesus operated, like his words back his actions, like you were saying, like he would have these huge crowds and he would kind of realize it and he'd be like, oh, there's a lot of people here. Then he would turn around and say something super harsh
Yeah.
or like say
Yeah.
something that like would confuse people to honest, if you look at it, to get them to leave, to weed them out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He'd be like, eat of my flesh. People are like, what?
Mhm.
This is a
No.
hard teaching. Who could
Yeah, it's
accept
just,
this?
yeah, that whole idea of, like one of my favorite things for the past year or so has been like the parable of the seed. Where you're like, yeah, you scatter seed everywhere. Like you tell everyone about Jesus like that you can. Um, but he's like, some of it will grow up and the sun will choke it out. Some of it doesn't have roots. Some of it grows on rocks. But he's like, some of it will fall in good soil. Um, he's like, but like water that. Like me, me and uh, me and John always say like, stop, don't water rocks. Because he's like the church will spend endless amounts of time like watering rocks, putting money into rocks. Um, as far as just like people that they don't really want Jesus, and even though as bad as you might want them to, because I've had those people where I'm like emotionally attached to like seeing them love Jesus, and they're just not interested, or they're just it's not their time, and it's like okay, you could be putting your time into like people that will produce like tenfold, which is another like that's harsh. Like that is probably one of the harshest things Jesus said. It's like don't put time into people that don't actually want me. Weed them out. Um,
Mm.
that's tough to swallow. There are a lot. I've realized I think lately more than ever is like Jesus has a lot of things that make me uncomfortable that don't really match up with like what like saw the church saying.
Yeah.
It's like no, like reach as many people as you can and put all your resources into them no matter what. Like don't give basically like the don't give up on people.
Yeah.
Um which I guess there's two contexts to that. Like yes, love people. Um but if some people like if they have ears let them hear basically. I always love how, like Cham would always put it like Jesus is like if you get it you get it. And if you don't, you don't.
Mhm.
And he just kind of was like, that's if you don't get it, then you can't follow me. At least like you don't have ears to hear right now. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Jesus definitely wasn't palatable for sure.
Yeah. Like I feel like a lot of people in our culture even are so um they're so identity like starved, I guess, that they naturally gravitate towards things that seem or appear fruitful. So like even a church where people are content to just sit and be a part of something rather than actually like actively engage in seeing it grow, nurtured, and develop. Um, which is a hard thing. You know, it's a very hard thing. And like Jesus wasn't into making his church popular, he was into making it powerful. And that power comes from him. And like this isn't like an easy answer thing. I too am like with our Tuesday group trying to find out ways to make like our people, to get them from being Marthas to get them to becoming Marys.
Hmm.
And that was something that hit me really strong recently, is like, the whole Martha and Mary story real briefly. Martha and Mary are friends of Jesus. Jesus is over at the house. They chilling at the table. Woo, woo, woo. The Lord speaking truth. Martha's
Woo.
cooking
Woo
food in the
woo woo,
kitchen.
Lord speaking truth.
Jesus speaking truth bars. Everything he said had a reason and purpose. So like he's like he
Bars.
just spitting bars in the living room. Martha's cooking, food's burning up, dishes piling up. She's frustrated. She's fed up. So much so that her sister Mary is sitting down just listening to Jesus speak. And she gets so indignant about like how her household is being portrayed by the people there, as if she can't hold her affairs together. She is so desperate for people to think that she can hold her own, that she rebukes Jesus mid speech, cuts him off, like, Lord, you're the Messiah. I know you got a good sermon going. I'm gonna let you finish, but my macaroni and cheese is burning. There's dishes everywhere. Tell Mary to get up and help me. Like, she is wrong for sitting here just doing nothing and listening to you. And like Martha didn't value the position that Mary's heart was in to simply have Jesus speak over her. And Jesus, like, so politely is just like, Martha, Martha, like, my baby, you burden yourself with many, many pains, but only this one thing is necessary. And like Jesus says that only this one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen a good portion and will not be taken away from her. Um, in that portion that Mary chose, she chose to have the Lord speak truth over her so she can walk in it, while Martha chose to just walk in action and didn't value having truth behind her actions, which is why Martha was stressed out. In Mary's case, what sitting at the feet of Jesus produces is you can't help but become like him when you fall in love with him as you hear about who he is and what he's done. So much so that it will impact the steps that you make. So each one that you make actually has purpose behind it. Versus the Martha approach was just spray and pray. I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna do that, and I'm just ask Jesus to bless it. And if he does, cool. And if not, I'm gonna get pissed off at him as if he owes me something. And I guess like if you have a church of people who value that one-on-one time to have the Lord speak truth over them and have their minds renewed by truth, you'll have a church that's more effective in what it's doing. Probably not popular, but effective. Like you will see lives transformed, and it may not look a certain way. It may still look gross because ministry just looks gross sometimes. But you will see the power of God behind it versus a lot of things happening, a lot of things going on, a lot of money going here and there, but still a very stagnated, fruitless body. I had to get that out. I'm gonna preach
I got
that.
nothing to add.
Yeah.
I'm gonna preach that on Throne Room Tuesday night. So y'all got a bit of my sermon. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's I think that's a good note to close on. I did want to just like touch on real quick the Mary Martha thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like I needed to hear that a little bit, Cal. Maybe not a little bit. Maybe I'm downplaying it, but just with being a stay-at-home dad, like I've been torn with like I guess you could say like productivity versus like presence. Where man, I don't know, when you're home all day, like you want to get some stuff done. So I feel like I am very present with Evelyn, but like days that I literally get like a fraction of what I wanted to get done, those days I end up like really just like feeling weighty and like just kind of unsettled. But yeah, need to keep that in the forefront of my mind as far as like just, all right, like, was I present with my daughter today? You know, like not did I get things done today, but just was I present with her, you know, and was I present with people that I interacted with, or was I just fixated on the things that I wanted to do?
Ooh. Talk about it. You preaching to the choir, man. Like it hit me equally just as hard. Like it really made me like accountable to the time that I spend and way more aware of that. And I think it's sobering and it's good. Like the Lord is not wrong for calling me out on any circumstance. He is never wrong for calling me out. He'll never call me out on something he doesn't intend to change in me. So I have to continue to look at that as an invitation. So like even like as I hit you, it hit me too. Like I need to be better with how I spend and invest my time. I need to be that much more intimate, especially if I'm gonna like invite the people of God to be that. If I'm not gonna even follow after, how dare I? Like,
Yeah,
that'd be really crappy of me to do that. But yeah, it is out of his love that he does send us those reminders.
Mm-hmm. Good word, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, Anthony, it was really great hearing your story, man. I really appreciate you sharing. I don't know. There were a lot of things that you said that hit really hard for me, and
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, yeah, because I definitely I really enjoyed like being on. Honestly, I think I said to you last time I saw you, like I think it's been long overdue.
Mhm.
But I was super pumped. I can't remember if Cal approached me or if I said something to him, but I was like, man,
Was that
I
work?
would love to be like, I just sometime. Like I didn't think it would be this soon, but I was like, man, I don't know, one time, just give me a spot. But I just yeah, that's cool. I just like hanging out. I love talking about this stuff too. I have to remind myself like it's not just about having good ideology, but like
Mhm.
actually like putting it in action and like actually saving people, like helping people meet Jesus. But this stuff's always good. I always like being sharpened by other people.
Good word, man.
Same, dude.
Appreciate you, dude.
Dude, I wish we had a podcast at the job for half the stuff we
Oh
talk
no
about.
no
Like
no, that would straight up have like the explicit e next to it.
for
But
everyone,
hey,
Yeah.
the content would be fantastic.
be great,
Yeah.
dude. Love you, man.
Yeah,
I'll
thanks
see you
guys so
tomorrow
much.
morning.
Yeah, appreciate you,
Uh-huh.
man.
Take it easy, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Later.
Dude, that was really
Bye.
legit, man.
Was it crazy?
Yeah.
What?
And I just want to say to like anyone who's listening, like, I don't know, I love hearing stories, and maybe because of seeing like a lot of my story in someone like Anthony's, like I love hearing stories of people that are just like, yeah, I didn't really have like much of a before Jesus story, but the reality is there is a story because you're a person and you have a story and it matters. And yeah, just because you don't have some dynamic thing to share about your personal life does not mean that God has not shifted your heart in major ways, and he uses whoever the heck he wants to, like he uses the
Mm-hmm.
ex druggy, like, I don't know, a person who has dealt with a whole lot of trauma and hurt. He uses the person who has had a squeaky clean life and has realized that they've been self-righteous. I don't know. It's just the vastness of the way that God interacts with us is always on display. I don't know. I just love it. So
Mm-hmm. Good word, man. You said everything.
I think this is probably going to be a 2-episoder because we're getting close to 2 hours here, which
Oh
I think
snap!
is maybe one of the longer ones that longer conversations that we've had. But
So good though. Yeah. If we need to two-part it, so be it. But
yeah,
yeah.
let's
Oh yeah.
let's just waste some more time, Calvin.
Okay.
Make sure that it's a 2-parter.
Oh gosh. What are we in for now?
We're just gonna let's call another guest, and no, I'm not gonna do that. But yeah,
Oh man.
thanks for doing this, Cal. Thanks for being a good sport with plastering your pictures all over of your modeling gig.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Shout out to Chris and Amanda Burnsurf who believe in me more than I believe in myself. How about
yeah, there
we'll
you
give the credit where it's really due. There it is.
go. Good word.
My
Appreciate
mom and dad are the best.
you. Yeah, appreciate you, man.